I learned yesterday that a current member of the cult that I left told someone who was on one of her telecalls, she's facilitating a call, and this person brought up these videos, and the facilitator, called her a bot. At first, I thought that was funny, and then I realized what they're actually doing is creating us versus them and dehumanizing. I'll speak about why that's so dangerous here in a second. I also wanted to make this video because of a question that was sent in from someone asking me to talk about how to get over from being led up the garden path and having the door slammed in your face. She says, my facilitator that I regarded as a friend hasn't spoken to me since June of 2019. She turned on me so completely that the resulting PTSD nearly broke me. One minute we were on good terms, the next minute I was completely rejected. I don't know why to this day she chose to go cold towards me. This person doesn't know how to treat people on the autism spectrum like me. I'm grateful to be free of that organization. And I will say this person who called the the person that was listening to my videos a bot was a really good friend of mine. I had no idea. I shouldn't say I have had no idea, but there's certain people that I left in the cult that have been very mean to me, and she was not one of them. So I was surprised to hear this, and I shouldn't be, but and here's why I shouldn't be surprised, because so when you leave a cult, the reason why you are shunned, and when you leave, they stay, they have to separate from you by literally making you into a different type of person, or even a different species, or a different thing than they are, or even dehumanizing you to the point that you're a bot. That's the topic of this video, how that works and why that is a cult technique. I'm Lauren Marie, and I got out of a personal development cult that I was in for 12 years. Last year, I was pretty high up in there, saw a lot, did a lot, and blowing the whistle on this cult. A lot of people have asked me to speak out on these issues. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an academic scholar yet, but because of my personal experience, I have educated myself over the last year, and in an effort to just share what I've learned and point you in the right direction to some resources and people that know a lot more than I do about all of this, because it's really helped me to educate myself and to understand what was done to me and my brain, and to be able to help others. Also, it's helping me, it's healing. A lot of you have reached out and shared personal stories with me. It's incredibly validating to hear, because even though I know this and I talk about this and I've heard so many stories, every time I hear another story, it just makes me feel like it was true. It was that bad, and that speaking out is worth it. So here's how cults maintain their power. This is one way: by creating and promoting an us versus them mentality. So cults prove powerful because they are able to successfully isolate members from their former non-cult lives. One of the ways cult leaders achieve this is to convince their followers that they are superior to those not in the cult. This is us versus them mentality. I'm going to link to this article, by the way, by the American Psychology Association, below this video. This us versus them mentality ultimately leads to cult members isolating themselves socially from friends and family. They replace those relationships with new ones inside the cult. We first need to become more aware of our tendency to put people into groups and create an us versus them mentality. That's human nature, especially if we want more peace, tolerance, and unity. So cults exploit this human nature to put people into groups and uses it to isolate their members and separate them from the rest of the world. So even if the group that you're in preaches unity or oneness or consciousness, pay attention to the way they describe members, and non-members. In Scientology, they talk about humans and humanoids. Humanoids are a special species that is better, more evolved, has more abilities, functions different than mere humans. In the cult I left, which was blatantly stolen from Scientology, they use this example, same names, humans and humanoids. So humanoids were described to me as a looks the same, sounds the same, walks the same, but is a different species than humans. And they're the ones who don't judge others, they only judge themselves. They're the innovators, the creators, whereas humans are like cows or sheep, worker bees. They just go along with the status quo. Humanoids are here to change the world. So from human and humanoid, where humans may be sort of like not that bad or dangerous, but they're kind of like boring and mundane, then it devolved into other concepts like techies and demons. And maybe you had an entity walk into your body. And they had a lot of different ways of describing what wasn't, a desirable thing to be on the planet. And of course, you're supposed to not change from one to the other. You just are one or the other. Like a horse doesn't grow up and become a cow. That's what they would tell you. Funny how many people leave the group that were supposedly humanoid and then become human. Oh my gosh, we just discovered. So, and they'll say that not all humanoids are in the group. Like there's other humanoids that haven't found the group yet, and then there are humans that are in the group. But if you listen, I mean, it's like, again, look at how they treat people, how they talk to people about people that leave and about people who don't subscribe to their doctrine. So if they are a non-believer or if they are a disbeliever or if they are an anti that cult, they will be disparaged. They will be called the other thing, whatever the bad thing is. So religious groups do this by insisting, whatever their religion is the only true religion, the only way to get into heaven or whatever the promised land is. The only way to know God. You're a saint if you're in, you're a sinner if you're out. Some groups describe non-members as like people of the world or sinful or that they have a bad association, or there's always like different ways of describing the thing that's not good about them. The way this is used is to create separation from cult member and everyone else in their family and in the world at large. So this makes you feel justified and right being in the cult. After all, you're just better than all those other people who just don't get it. And I really felt special being in this group and knowing that I was like this small percentage of the population who was really like understanding and getting some unique concepts. And well, I thought they were unique. And then that we were there to change the world. Whereas like everyone else was sort of like in this reality is what they call it. Lots of problems with this, especially because it's really designed to keep you in because no one wants to be less than. So if you are leaving, that means that you're choosing less, you are less, you are wrong, you're not, willing to receive whatever that is. Cults, this comes from Stephen Hassan. He says cults often use behavior modification on followers, such as thought-stopping techniques and instilling an us versus them mindset. Thought-stopping techniques or thought-stopping cliches are these throwaway phrases that you'll hear and you can't answer them. Like there's no way to respond to them. It just stops the discourse, which cults are great at stopping actual conversation. Like you can't have a debate or disagree. You have to just accept whatever you're told. And in these groups, they'll throw out these thought-stopping cliches. In my group, it was, and still is today, really popular. Well, that's just a choice. Well, that was just a choice. And my God, how much this has been abusive. Like the number of people that have come to me and said, I called this facilitator and said, my daughter's suicidal. Well, it's just a choice. It's just her choice. Not helpful, not helpful. And okay, so back to Stephen Hassan's quote. With thought-stopping techniques, members are taught to stop doubts from entering their consciousness about the cult, often with a key phrase they repeat. You'll hear these same phrases thrown around. There's memes about them. And so anytime a doubt comes up, this key phrase is repeated in order to stop your critical thinking or question it. Phobia indoctrination is used, where cults play on a person's irrational fears with threats such as the person will develop cancer or go insane if he or she ever leaves or questions the group. So where we have us versus them, and we have sort of a milder version where you're like a horse or a cow type person, and then you have this like more extreme version, like they would say Trump is an example of a techie. Techies are worse than humans. They're out to destroy the planet. So there's different, I'm just describing the cult I was in. Insert whatever your group uses. But it's basically to separate you. So there's the us people and the them people. And then it devolves into this dehumanizing. Dehumanizing is to deprive someone or something of human qualities, personality, or dignity. That's just a definition from Webster's. Think about slaves. Okay, they were able to be enslaved because they weren't seen as equal or even human. They just were not even considered human beings. So, of course, they didn't deserve basic human rights. Jews in the Holocaust. So, in the Third Reich, they were not considered to be fully human. They were subhuman. Despite being born within the Reich, they were considered to be illegally residing there. And then it devolved into where it was, the slippery slope where they could be, quote, exterminated. Women in many cultures, even today, are not seen as equals, or they're even seen as property. Children in most cultures today are seen as property, not as equal rights human beings. So not seeing someone as equal to you, the same as you, or in your group allows you to remove guilt in hurting them in whatever way, whether it's shunning, slandering, abusing, calling them a bot, whatever. Or even simply that they don't have to believe you, because after all, you're not them anymore. You're not even a person. If you read some of the comments here on my videos, or even more on my Facebook page, which I'll link to below, you can see why they would want to dehumanize me. You will see literally hundreds of personal stories from people, real people, who are telling their experience of abuse, misuse of power, coercive control, and worse. You'll read those and think, how can anyone read this and still believe in this group being a good thing and these leaders doing good in the world? Well, the only way is to discredit them to the point where they're not even human beings. They're not even living, breathing people that you should read their stories. You should just disregard them. Maybe they're not even real. Maybe they're just bots. It's much easier to deal with that. And I get it, because there's a tremendous amount of cognitive dissonance when you're in a cult and you believe the person, the leader, you believe for maybe years and years, decades, that they were good and they have your best interest at heart. It's the ends justify the means. Anything that they do is for the better good of the planet, the people, whatever. So, the dissonance when you hear someone else say, that same person hurt me, abused me, shamed me. You might even hear the words coming out of their mouth to someone that you used to be friends with or care about. And in your brain, you have to reconcile those two disparate ideas. It's hard. It's much easier to disregard the person by deciding that they are something that you're not. In this case, they're not even a human being. Um, so what do you think? Am I a bot? Are you for watching this? Am I crazy? Am I some sort of reptile techie alien implant? Um, Comment below. I'm curious what you think is really going on here. If you found this useful, please share it with someone who you think needs to hear it.